If you have been paying attention to the news lately, you know what's happening in Israel at this point in time, and it is a mess. In my opinion, there is no real solution to this except in terms of a redemptive solution that both sides, Islamists and Jews, need to come to Jesus. This isn't anything new. If you look in the New Testament, you'll see there was a battle that took place even among Jews in the book of Acts. There were those, in fact, who embraced Jesus as the promised Messiah, and there's who did not. And it's the same today. In my estimation, there is no special status for Israel. Israel is like any other nation, redemptively, prophetically. I'm going to try to make that point in this particular response to Glenn Beck and Max Lucado, who did a short interview dealing with Gog and Magog and a couple of passages out of the Olivet Discourse, and others have done the same. I've seen this on a regular basis. Greg Laurie has also done material on Gog and Magog. It is the thing right now in prophetic circles, is looking at Ezekiel 38 and 39 and claiming that that is, in fact, a prophecy about our day.
We've got Gog and Magog for the very first time conspiring against evil, against Israel.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
But doesn't it looks...
Brother Glenn, all the players are in place. Okay, so the big difference between right now and even World War II is the existence of the state of Israel.
Right.
I mean, that's the prophecy. I'm sympathetic with some student of prophecy from 200 years ago who says, well, this is never going to happen. How in the world could the Jews ever repopulate the nation of Israel? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just the greatest miracle. Mm-hmm. And so that miracle, that sign, it seems to me, Glenn, announced that we're in the final days.
And this has gotten so bad recently that people are actually claiming that the rapture is right around the corner. And this isn't anything new historically. There has always been these claims that, the rapture is right around the corner. We might remember Hal Lindsey's book came out in 1970, more than 50 years ago, claiming that before 1988, the rapture was going to take place. And you can find similar types of predictions in prophetic circles all over the place. And Gog and Magog, by the way, the Ezekiel 38 and 39 prophecy has been around for a very, very long time as well. I have a number of books in my library going back to the 1940s claiming that Gog and Magog's fulfillment was right around the corner. And so you're talking about a long time that Gog and Magog has been used. In fact, if you look at the history of prophetic predictions, you will see in a book that we published, The Day and the Hour by Francis Gummerlock, that Gog and Magog has been in the prophetic file cabinet, if you will, for centuries. So this isn't anything new. The claim is being made that things are different now, that Israel is a nation, became a nation again in 1948. And as a result of that, everything that's happening today, it revolves around Israel becoming a nation again. But keep this in mind. Israel becoming a nation again has nothing to do prophetically or redemptively. In the Old Testament, when the Jews returned to the land after exile, they repented. Read the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, especially Nehemiah chapter 8. They came back repentant. Israel today is not a repentant nation. It is a nation just like any other nation, like the United States. They are, without Christ, they are outside God's kingdom. And for any solution to take place among the Muslims and the Jews, it's going to have to be through Jesus. Now, the claim is being made that Ezekiel 38 and 39 has something to do prophetically with our day. And this was a case that was being made between Max Lucado and Glenn Beck. I was kind of surprised to see Max Lucado as his guest dealing with this, because he's really not known as an expert in terms of Bible prophecy, and Glenn Beck certainly isn't either. So I'm going to just run through this quickly on Ezekiel 38 and 39. Ezekiel 38 and 39, the book of Ezekiel was written around 600 BC, and it's a prophecy about events that I believe were going to take place a few hundred years later when Israel was going to be attacked by the nations surrounding Israel. And I believe that that attack is described in the book of Esther, where Haman is the bad guy. He is the chief antagonist in coming against the Jews. And if you look at Esther chapter 3, you will see that he wanted to wipe the Jews off from the face of the earth, man, woman, and child. And what was interesting in this interview with Max Lucado by Glenn Beck, they maintain that what's happening today is unique in history. It is not unique in history. Again, look at the book of Esther. The intent in the book of Esther was to eradicate the Jews. And then you get into the New Testament, where you will find with Jesus' prediction about what was going to happen to Israel before their generation passed away, where the Romans came in and according to Josephus, who was an eyewitness to all of that was taking place, you will see that he states that more than a million Jews were killed as a result of that. So this isn't anything unique. And what you're seeing taking place today has nothing to do with Bible prophecy, and it doesn't have anything to do with Ezekiel 38 and 39. Let me just do a little quick rundown. The claim has been made that the word Rosh in Ezekiel 38 and 39 refers to modern-day Russia, because Rosh somehow sounds like Russia. Well, the Hebrew word Rosh is a word that's used over 600 times in the Old Testament and simply means chief or head. And so the correct translation is chief prince, not prince of Rosh, that is prince of Russia. And this has been debated a long time. I deal with this in a book that I wrote called the Gog and Magog End Time Alliance, where I deal with all the arguments related to how Rosh is used in terms of biblical prophecy. So the prophecy that's taking place in the book of Ezekiel is a ancient battle. If you go through Ezekiel 38 and 39, here's what you will find. This battle that takes place, the people are on horseback. They're using bows and arrows. They're using swords. They have chariots. These are ancient weapons that are being used in this particular battle. Now you'll find some people saying, "Oh well, but that was Ezekiel describing this battle in terms that the people in Ezekiel's day in the ancient culture would have understood this." Well, why would Ezekiel do this for their culture for something that wasn't going to take place for another 2,600 years? You see, it seems to me that if you're really going to be a prophet, you're going to describe a battle that is typical of the types of weapons that we have today. So all the weaponry used in Ezekiel 38 and 39 are ancient weapons. And some prophecy prognosticators say, well, horses means horsepower, and bows and arrows mean missiles and missile launchers, and chariots mean tanks. And this is coming from people who claim to interpret the Bible literally. It is nonsense. That battle is an ancient battle. That battle has, in fact, been fulfilled. And I believe the antagonist here is Haman. There's a place, I think it's in Ezekiel 39, where it talks about Haman Gog. And Haman was, in fact, the chief antagonist in coming up against the Jews, trying to wipe them off the earth. And what you find happening in the book of Esther, that Haman, in fact, was defeated, which is exactly what takes place in Ezekiel 38 and 39. I believe one of the key indicators in Ezekiel 38 and 39 is what the antagonists were after. And if you look at Ezekiel chapter 38, let me turn to this for you. It says here in verse 13 of chapter 38, Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish with all its villages will say to you, have you come to capture spoil? Have you assembled your company to seize plunder, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to capture great spoil? So this enemy that was going to come down and attack Israel at this point, again, which I believe was Haman, a Agagite, as he is called in other places, were after gold, silver, cattle, and goods. Now, if you put this in the historical context, when the Israelites came back from the captivity, remember, they go off into captivity, First, the northern the tribes, and then finally the southern tribes under Babylon. They come back from captivity. They come back to Israel. And what do they bring back with them? Well, the book of Ezra tells us they brought back with them gold, silver, cattle, and goods. And you can read this in Ezra chapter 1, verse 4. So the very thing that Haman was after is predicted in Ezekiel were the very things that were brought back from the captivity. And if you read the book of Esther, you'll see that Haman wanted to be paid in silver. He wanted, for him, this was just like so much war that takes place today. He was after money. He was after a bounty, loot, in order to build the case for him and his own family. You know, the result of that is that Haman and his sons were in fact killed as the result of this attempt to destroy the Jews. So this claim that what you're reading and what you're finding today is something new is just not the case. From Ezekiel 38:39 in Matthew chapter 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21. Another key indicator here is a description of Jerusalem at that particular period of time within Israel. When the Israelites came back from captivity, initially they were living in a place without walls. So in Ezekiel 38 and 39, we find that this event takes place when there are unwalled villages. And in the book of Esther, in Esther chapter 9, you'll find the same Hebrew word used, that this is a period of time in which there were no walls around the city. Now later on, walls were in fact built. But when this prophecy is given, and when Haman is about to attack Israel and take their plunder that was brought back from the captivity, they did not have walls around their cities. But today, if you go to Israel, there are walls all over the place. So Ezekiel 38 and 39 wouldn't have anything whatsoever to do with this particular prophecy. Again, to mention, it's an ancient battle, ancient weapons, gold, silver, cattle, and goods, the very thing that the Jews brought back from captivity. This particular prophecy, again, is being used today in order to perpetuate this myth that we're living on the edge of the last days and that the rapture of the church is going to take place. Greg Laurie has made this abundantly clear. David Jeremiah has done the same thing about claiming we are just about to see the rapture take place. And again, if you study the history of Bible prophecy, you will see that this has been a common feature of all of it. And guess what? Every time they bring about this claim, they've been proven wrong. Now, people might say, well, this time it's different because Israel is back in the land. Israel came back in the land in 1948. There's not a thing in the New Testament that says anything about Israel coming back to the land as being a significant indicator of Bible prophecy. The Old Testament talks about Israel coming back to the land, and in fact, Israel came back to the land. Then there's the claim, well, the temple is going to be rebuilt. There's not a single verse in the New Testament that says anything about the temple being rebuilt. The Old Testament talks about the temple being rebuilt, and guess what? The temple, in fact, had been rebuilt during Jesus' ministry. The temple was standing. And it was standing all the way up until about AD 66. By the AD 64, the temple was more grand than any other time in history. So the New Testament doesn't say anything about a rebuilt temple. The New Testament doesn't say anything about a political antichrist to come on the scene. If you look at the definition of an antichrist is someone who denied that Jesus had come in the flesh. If you look at 1 John chapter 2, verse 18, 1 John chapter 2, 22, 1 John chapter 4, 2 John 7, you'll see a very specific definition of what an antichrist was. You will also see when these antichrists, because there were many of them, when they were alive, and they were alive in John's day. So this entire prophetic scenario that we are seeing today is based upon passages that have already been fulfilled. And I believe we're setting up a dangerous scenario where we are looking at what's taking place in the Middle East, and it's going to become a prophetic inevitability. Because one other feature of this end-time scenario is that the Jews, 2/3 of them living in Israel, will be slaughtered based upon the book of Zechariah, chapter 13, verses 8 and 9. That is, in fact, the popular view of what happens to Israel during this Great Tribulation period. And if that's the case, what we try to do in terms of peace and bring about a settlement to all this is futile because the Jews are supposed to be slaughtered. And so you don't have to be a Bible scholar in order to figure out these things. Read the Bible, pay attention to the audience, the references, pay attention to the specifics of it. Especially if you look at Ezekiel 38 and 39, you'll see this is an ancient battle. If you look at Matthew chapter 24, Luke 21, Mark 13, you will see that there's an audience reference there where Jesus is describing these things that are going to happen to the people to whom he was speaking. All of these things took place before that particular generation passed away. And I know this may seem new to a lot of you. I've written a couple of books on this. One is Jesus Coming Soon? Another one is Wars and Rumors of Wars, and another one is Last Days Madness. And these are all available at AmericanVision.org, AmericanVision.org. If you are interested in additional papers and so forth, articles on this topic, I suggest that you go to AmericanVision.org and do a search on these topics, and you'll find dozens and dozens of articles that deal with this.